Hello, hello. We've got Ian Koff joining us on Splendid today. Ian, how you doing?
Hey, Brandon, great to be here with you today.
Thanks for taking the time. Would love
hmm
to would love to kick it off. So for those who are tuning in and maybe aren't familiar with you and some of your work, who are you? What do you do? And what have you been working on lately?
So my name is Ian Koff. I am a brand marketing creative veteran of over 20 years. I've been in-house, I've been at agencies, I've run my own shops. I've kind of seen it all across the board. And I've always enjoyed really challenging narrative-driven work. Working with groups that have very complicated or technical stories to tell and finding a way to translate those stories into emotionally resonant narratives that are going to connect with audiences and find ways to move the needle for the business, but also to generate a lot of goodwill for the brands. Basically, give me an opportunity to do great work with great people, and that's what I'm most happy and excited to do.
Nice. I love that. And that shines through in all the work that you do, which is great.
Thank you.
So yeah, no doubt. I know that right now, something that I think would be interesting to get into is kind of your work as a creative operator, but as a fractional creative director. I think that's really cool. We're seeing a lot more of the movement towards fractional, C-suite people as opposed to hiring that role specifically, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what made that the right model for you at this time and what clients get out of a fractional leader as opposed to what they wouldn't get otherwise?
It's a great question. And I found for me, and again, like everybody's got to figure out the right lane for them. Some people are better at this type of model. Some people fit better into something that's more kind of full-time in-house all the time. But for me, the fractional model really lets me get my hands dirty where I'm most valuable, helping companies to clarify their story and sharpen their creative systems, really just improving the way that the work gets made. I have found, especially in the shift towards AI, and I think we'll talk more about that in a bit, a lot of companies right now, they don't really need like a full-time senior creative leader forever. It's more about having one at the moments that matter the most, whether that's a repositioning phase, if you're launching a campaign, if you're overhauling your brand or your website, or if the creative has just sort of gone stale over time and you really need to get a fresh perspective on it. So in this capacity, my clients are getting that senior level judgment without having to build out a whole department around it. And the other thing that for me makes it interesting is I think that they get a different kind of honesty with a fractional leader because I'm working with them and not for them, right? And I think that distinction matters a lot. When you're inside a company full time, you are going to become part of the politics. Like it's just inevitable. You've got to manage relationships. You got to play within the hierarchy. And I don't have to do that as a fractional leader. I can get to the truth faster because I'm not trying to protect my own seat within the organization. And so I can be a lot more blunt. I can say, this doesn't make sense. This is slowing the work down. This creative is solving the wrong problem. And I don't have to navigate that same level of internal baggage. So, when you can get to the truth faster, the work gets better faster. And that's, in a nutshell, kind of why I built my agency, my studio, Just Cause. It's built around that idea. It's high-level creative leadership for organizations that are doing meaningful work, sharp thinking, honest collaboration, rigorous execution, but without all the extra baggage and the ego and the politics that just slows great work down.
Well said. I think the internal politics part is super interesting. And I've been on the agency side for a long time now. And that's one thing that in working with different clients, is you really get exposed to different internal politics and the hierarchy of whose opinion matters more and at what time in the process, right? I think that's super interesting. I was gonna ask you specifically about, the people that are bringing in fractional creative leadership versus hiring in-house, what they should look for. But I feel like you almost touched on it a little bit there, just because if you're doing your job well, though, you're probably not going to be retained super long term with some of these clients. Your job is to kind of come in, impact, create change, like execute a campaign, have it do well, and obviously run another campaign if all goes well. But your time is probably finite with a lot of these clients that you work with, right?
Yeah, well, and that's the goal with a lot of engagements is to get in, kind of be a ninja, make the impact, move the needle, and then get out and let the company grow from there. And I've had clients that come back 3, 6, 9 months later with another engagement. I've had clients that have said to me, you know what, we'd actually kind of like to keep you on an ongoing retainer with, ebbs and flows, but because we were able to accomplish so much in a shorter amount of time, the value becomes evident. So every client is different, every engagement is different. Ultimately, not having to play those politics is very attractive to the C-suite leadership. Being able to bring someone in who they know is really just there to get it done and isn't going to be playing games and looking out for their interests over the companies. And I think that resonates with a lot of leaders. It's not for everybody, like I said, but for the groups that it does make sense for, that's a good fit for me. But when it comes to how do you pick, right? You're asking, what does it look like when someone's a fractional leader and what can they bring to the table and how, what matters most to the clients? I think that companies should really be looking for someone who can operate at both levels. You've got strategy and execution. You do not want someone who's going to come in with all these grandiose ideas and lofty recommendations and then disappear when it's time to actually do the work, right? So you need someone who can play in both lanes. The right creative leader needs to be able to understand your business model, your audiences, the sales funnel, the operational realities around the work, and then just like a note about the truth in terms of like that blunt honesty. That is great, and it's a big part of what I'm able to bring to the table. But you can't be reckless about it, and I certainly try very, very best not to be. You have to build rapport. You got to pair that bluntness with trust and context and respect for the people that are in house that are already doing the work. Nobody likes to have a consultant come in and feel like they're going to be a wrecking ball and they're just coming in swinging big and breaking everything to put their own mark on it. That's not what I'm about. That's not what my clients are looking for. So, I think that you want someone who's going to come in to ask the hard questions, what's working, what's not, where is the process mucking up? But, I guess what I would also say is, that's a good overview, at least from my perspective, in terms of what the companies look for. But if you are thinking about doing this for yourself and you're thinking about, well, what makes it a good fit for me as a fractional leader? Sometimes I talk with prospects who say they want fractional, but they really want an order taker. It's like, I just really want someone to come in and produce and do the work, and I'm going to tell you what I need and you're going to go on and do it. And again, I'm not here to say what is right or wrong, but for me, like, I want to be given more context. I need access. I need trust to influence the system. Otherwise, my impact on your business is really going to be limited. And I also think going back to if companies are looking for a fractional leader, make sure that you're talking to someone who's not treating the work like a portfolio prize. That I'm not there to win a Clio. My job is not to do something clever. My job is to do something that is useful and ownable and effective based on what your goals are.
Got it. That makes sense. A lot of good advice there too. I think, coming in with a mind of, I'm not just here to wreck shop and I'm not just going to, kind of dictate this should be the strategy and then bounce. You're here to do the work. And I think as a fractional creative leader, that gives you time to do more time on task, doing what you actually love, as opposed to spending the time going back and forth in kind of the struggle.
Right.
So I think
Right.
there were a lot of great points there. I think one thing that's interesting too is kind of something that we've talked about in previous conversations is that it's not just kind of getting in there to fix, okay, the creative needs an overhaul. That's why you're there. But oftentimes it's the process as well, right? Like when you go in, what's working, what's not working, that's probably where you as a senior level operator have probably the most to offer when you're coming in from a fractional standpoint, right? So walking into situations where a brand's creative has just gone stale, right? It needs something new. Everything looks the same. We need a new system. Maybe we need something new to get in there. So how do you approach when you're entering into situations with teams that are maybe set in their ways, where it's like, okay, the creative will change, but it's the process that needs to change first and foremost?
Yeah, absolutely. So you start by looking for patterns, right? Not just one-off pieces of creative and trying to ascertain what's right or wrong about that. If everything feels the same, it's not usually because an ad or a page on a website is bad. It's because the system underneath it has become too narrow. So you kind of have to step back and say, let's not look at what's wrong with the creative. Let's try to figure out what's going wrong with the system that generates the creative. And that starts with looking at all the inputs, right? Like, let's take a look at the briefs. Let's look at your assumptions. Let's see what has won in the past and what's not winning now. Templates, performance data. How does the team define good, right? In quotes, like, what are the assumptions that everybody is making that's yielding the product that we have right now? And let's pressure test that, and let's stress test it, and let's really see where the schisms may appear. Because that's where you start to separate consistency from repetition. And consistency is really an execution of brand discipline, where repetition is more emblematic of creative fatigue, So again, this is where the honesty matters, right? The problem isn't always with the creative team and the work that they're doing. I find more times than not, it's in the way that the organization has trained the team, and they've become accustomed to making really safe and familiar and low risk work. But you only can really get to that and uncover it when you're willing to dig deep and look at those foundational elements and see, what is yielding the work that's coming out. So once you do that, from there, you work to build a better operating system for the creative, better briefs, stronger strategic territories, more intentional testing, better feedback loops. Like all of these kinds of things make more room for more differentiated ideas. And that's usually where you're trying to get to make the creative feel more relevant and compelling and fresh. Again, the goal is not to just walk in there and blow everything up. You want to keep what's working, but you want to get rid of what's stale. You want to give the team a more useful way to make strong work over time.
Absolutely. I love that you talked about, okay, like what does good look like? And is that definition the same to everyone who's going to be involved, right? The people at the very top who are setting the direction and the strategy, and then the executors who eventually have to turn that strategy into the creative that's going to be put in advertisements, right? So top down, that's got to be the same. And they need someone operationally minded to make sure that they can get there and follow a certain structure, I guess, right? So easier said than done.
Yes, but it's all about alignment. Alignment is key, making sure that every stakeholder from the CEO to the junior copywriter understands what is it that we're trying to achieve, what are we willing to do in pursuit of that objective, and making sure that there isn't a lot of daylight between the two, between where we are right now and where we want to go. And when you have that alignment and everybody knows that you're moving in the right direction, that's when the magic happens.
All right, great. So, I mean, a man of many hats, a man of many interests, like super cool. Love everything you're doing on the fractional side. But the thing I was maybe most excited to talk to you about is STRATOS, the newest project that you've got going on. So when we were talking last time, I found myself a little bit in this story because I, like you, have been super interested in extreme weather and watching thunderstorms as a child. So take us back. I'd love to unpack your kind of newest venture that you're working on now. Where did the weather obsession come from? And when did it when did you flip the switch? Like, I'm going to do something with this passion, right? Because everyone's got a passion, but not everyone necessarily can kind of say, I'm going to get both feet in this pool and I'm going to go build something here.
Yeah, it's funny where the journey takes you, and I can't tell you exactly where the passion comes from. I can tell you that it's always been there. I've been obsessed with weather as long as I can remember. It's kind of like you, Brandon. I was always the kid at the window watching the storms roll in, trying to make sense of what was happening, way before I had any real language for it, just as like a toddler, just pressed up against the glass, always obsessed with what was coming down out of the sky. If you want a super nerdy story about me really quickly.
Yes, please.
In 8th grade Earth Science, we had a weather unit, and I asked my teacher if I could take the test before it was taught. And so he let me go ahead and do that, and I aced the exam. So he actually then asked if I wanted to help teach the unit. And I'm sure anyone who recalls middle school probably would agree that it's not the kindest time in your life to be viewed as a nerd. And so me teaching weather to a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds, it didn't exactly turn me into the star quarterback. But I suppose it does speak to how passionate I've been about this subject matter for a very long time. As a creative, I've always been drawn to the cinematic, and I think weather is a very cinematic experience. It has tension and scale and beauty and consequence, so it is obviously a science, but there's also so much story to it. And I think that's also part of what really resonates with me. So, for a very long time, it was always just a passion. I'd get really excited for the start of hurricane season. I would study forecasts. I started kind of paying attention to how people react or don't react to a scenario where the weather's becoming dangerous. And so in the last couple of years, I've been working to solve that problem. And the problem is not that we lack information. It's that information is not being adequately translated and conveyed to people, obviously you and I as homeowners and civilians, certainly, but to the people who are responsible for keeping other people safe. That's where the gap is. And so about a year ago, I founded STRATOS to try to solve that problem.
Yeah, let's talk about what that solves, because I remember when we talked about this in the past, you described it as a bunch of like nothing burger alerts, right? That would come to people's phone, and then
Yeah.
it's the boy who cried wolf. There's fatigue, right? So
hmm
like how did you kind of like get to that point where it's like, okay, something has to be done here, and how does Stratos different, and then who is it really going to be for? Who's going to be using this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you're absolutely right. We live in this world where your phone is blowing up constantly with weather alerts, most of which, and most of the time, they don't feel relevant to you. They're not tied to your location. They're not tied to what you need to do or don't need to do. And that creates fatigue. So the danger is that when everything feels urgent, nothing does, right? And the alert that actually matters is then going to get treated like every other alert that didn't. Where Stratos is different is that we're not trying to out forecast the weather service. We're not trying to be another weather app on the phone. Stratos sits in the decision layer between weather data, weather information, and operational action. So it translates the inputs, the weather data, the observations, the forecasts, the alerts that the weather service is putting out. It's translating those into hyperlocal role-specific guidance. What's happening? Why does it matter? Who needs to act? What should they consider doing next? And like I said, it's really for the people that are responsible for keeping us safe. So we partner with city and county governments in their emergency management departments, their public works departments, communications. We work with school districts and university campuses. We work with critical infrastructure enterprise groups, logistics and utility companies and groups like that. So it's not, again, really meant to be the app you go to for your 7-day forecast. It's when we're sending out an alert, you as the user, whether it's you as a civilian or you in a professional capacity, understand exactly what's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, and what should you do about it.
I love that. I love that you were able to take this, passion, hobby, like side quest here and turn it into something, and not to be forgotten about here. Like you've got Just Cause, Fractional creative leader. That takes a lot of time and energy, and you've got a young son at home, which is exhausting in its own right. And you found time to, go to Penn State to get this weather forecasting certificate. Like that's really incredible to be able to balance all those three things. Where do you get the energy? Like how, is it just passion too that just drives you and motivates you? I think that's really interesting, right? Because some people can get so bogged down in what's happening right in front of them, as opposed to being able to you know what? I've got three things on the go. They're all super important, and not ranking those in any order of importance. Your fractional creative leadership, raising a son, and then chasing your passion project. Like that's all three of those things sound like a full-time job in and of themselves. So that's really cool that you're able to pull that off.
Yeah, no, thanks, Brandon. It's passion and caffeine, I think, that really gets the job done. Nothing is ever by accident, and I believe that you're never handed more than you can really handle, and when it's the right time and it's important to do something, you just make everything work. I had reached a point where I didn't want weather to just be something I was passionate about. I wanted to do something meaningful in the arena. And I knew that I had to earn the right to talk about it more seriously. And so that's why I enrolled at Penn State, because going back to school is what gave me that foundation. It forced me to really understand more about the science, not just, consume weather as a member of Gen Pop. And that's really important for Stratos because we sit in a very high stakes space. If you're building something around readiness and public safety and operational decision making, curiosity is not enough. You have to really understand what it is that you are making and selling. And so going back to school to get the scientific fluency, to get a better grounding in meteorology, that was really important. And, timing is everything. I started the program back in August of 2024. Our son was supposed to be born in November, but he came 9 weeks early in early September, which was right after classes began. And so, the timing certainly wasn't convenient, but I guess that also sort of becomes part of the story, right? This is something that I believed in, and I had the support of my wife, which is key always. And, when you're passionate and you're dedicated, you just find a way to make it work.
Absolutely. No doubt. Shout out to your wife. definitely wearing a lot, right? When you're a bit kind of with all this work, you know. So shout out to her for sure. I love how, you know, you talk about getting that degree, which really that's the trust layer, right? That's the okay, I can be an authority on the subject because I went to school for it and you got the degree. This isn't something you can just guess at, extreme weather. If you're going to
Right.
be in it, then you have to be able to have the certifications to back that up, right? And then the other side of the equation is, okay, how do I build this thing, right? Because we live in a day and age now where people who have the wherewithal and have the drive to leverage AI tools and get both feet in the pool, you can really chase down these passion projects, which I think is super interesting that you've been able to do. And last time we were talking about this, you flat out said, like, would not have been able to do this a couple of years ago, right?
Right.
We're at an age now where AI makes it possible to do this sort of stuff because you're maybe not the most traditional product founder, but you've got the science background and then you've got the curiosity and the know-how to use AI. So do you want to
hmm
talk a little bit about the combination behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it when you said leverage. I think that's what AI has given me. I think that's what it's given a lot of, like you also said, non-traditional founders. I'm not a software guy. I'm not a technical guy. I'm not a meteorologist, right? I mean, so it's like I've had to bolster my understanding and my skills in certain key areas, but AI has been one of those things that really has given me that leg up. It has not magically built the company for me. This is not something that you just vibe code over a weekend and you ship, but it certainly has helped me move from idea to product much faster than I could have ever imagined doing it before. We use AI to refine the concept, to shape the logic, to pressure test the messaging, build the pitch materials, help prototype workflows, like all of these things that would have been completely out of reach without a full technical team from day one. These are examples of things that we've been able to do with a much leaner team. And I think the AI has also helped me become a better thinker. Like anything else, you got to understand how to use these tools. You have to be disciplined. You have to be objective about it. But when you invest the time to really know and understand how to make AI work for you, the AI becomes a strategy partner, right? It becomes an editor, it becomes a product collaborator in ways that, again, you just didn't have access to only a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I love that as a strategy partner, right? But oftentimes people run into this pitfall all the time of just AI can be your, you know, your hype girl, your yes man, just saying, yeah, that's
Totally.
a great idea. Let's run in that direction, right? And you
hmm
end up in this echo chamber where your thoughts are just being reinforced, whether they're actually true and valid or not. How do you get your tools to push back and give you honest, objective guidance so that
Yeah,
you can build properly, right?
it's so true. I mean, it feels like AI by default is just sycophantic, right? Like you can give it an idea that you know is bad, but you can say, "Hey, I think this is a good idea. What do you think?" And it'll be like, "Yes, absolutely. Go for it. Let's build a plan." And you could then go down the rabbit hole with something that you even objectively knew at the start was just stupid, but it will, and it has been trained to kind of make you feel good about the things that you say. So you have to stop treating AI like your hype girl, like your cheerleader. If you ask it whether your idea is good, it's going to tell you that it is. So I try to assign our agents with roles that have kind of the tension built in. So, you're a skeptical investor, you're opposing counsel, you're a procurement officer, you're a customer who doesn't care about my vision. Now, what is your read on these things that I'm trying to put in front of you? So that's I think the first thing to do is tell it that you're basically opposing my vantage point and help me pressure test. And then use it to find the flaws, not just to improve the language, right? So like, where is our logic weak? What would this buyer question? What am I overpromising? What's most likely to fail? And so in that space, I think that the best use of AI is not really validation, it's friction. It should help you make the work better by forcing you to defend your thinking. And I think that people that understand how to use AI in that capacity, they're the ones that get the most out of these systems.
That's a great answer. That's great advice in general. And like everyone's like varying levels of AI adoption, right? But like having it be so, it's almost counterintuitive, right? Like push back completely on me. Like you're a
hmm
skeptical investor. I love that. I love that framing, right? Of positioning this agent to actively work against you, right? And like cut it up, find the holes. That way you can build a better all around product. I think that's a really good
Yep.
way of thinking and maybe something that not everyone's thought of or applying as rigorously as they should.
Yeah, I think that you also you have to have confidence in yourself. As I know what I'm talking about. I've built a career out of my judgment and my skill. So don't just assume that the AI knows better than you do. Right. I think a lot of people sort of fall into that trap. They just assume, well, this is a piece of technology. It's really fast. It must be smart. I should probably listen, and I think that's why it's very important to force the system to make you defend your thinking. If it can't find flaws in what you truly believe in, then you've probably got something going. But if you just ask it for what should I do, you'd be able to, Swiss cheese it in a minute. There's just going to be flaws everywhere.
Yeah, no doubt. I've had a conversation with somebody else about this, about using it for, I mean, people use it for writing all the time, but like using AI for writing, if you're not a writer and you don't have experience writing, the output isn't going to be very good. But if you're a skilled writer and you know what you're talking about and you know how to think properly to organize thoughts in such a way that would yield good writing that a human would want to read, and you're using AI tools, then you'll get much better output, right? So that's a great call out, is trust your own instincts, right? Trust your own experience and your own learned experiences in the space as an operator, as an expert. AI is just there as a tool. It's not, don't just default to whatever Claude or whatever you're using is gonna give you, right? So I think that's good advice as well. I think you've got an interesting kind of like, I love to use the word friction, right? You've got an interesting friction point yourself, being a creative operator. You were working creative before leveraging AI, right? Where it was more manual. It was more a human layer of things. So it's an interesting battle for creatives right now, right? Where you're probably feeling pressure to use AI tools. You've made your whole career. You've got all these experiences of being an expert without AI tools, but now there's a mandate coming in for a lot of these folks on they need to use it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question and discussion point, and I think as we've discussed here today, there are things that AI is truly excellent at. It's great at acceleration and exploration and synthesis, right? It can really help us generate ideas and options. It can organize a lot of complex things. It can help you stress test ideas. It gets you to a stronger starting point faster. And, that's really where I think it excels more so than anything else. But creative taste, it still matters. Judgment matters. Knowing what to keep, what to cut, what's ownable, what comes across as generic AI slop, that's the job for the person. That's something that AI, at least so far, and I hope it stays that way, is never truly able to do, because there are just intangible, subjective vantage points that we apply as creative professionals every day. If we hand over that judgment, we are basically saying we're not smart enough, we're not good enough. And that's never the case. You need to use these tools in a way to optimize and maximize what you bring to the table, but you never want to be in a position where you're turning over control. In creative work, it's we the people, right? We have to stay in charge of the point of view. We're the arbiters of the emotional truth, the strategic choice. We have to draw those lines, and we have to be the ones willing to make the final call. So, in my humble opinion, I don't think AI should ever be a creative director. I do think it can be a super powerful creative department, but like any department, it needs very strong leadership. And that's where the human is always going to be needed.
Absolutely. With the human experiences, the subjectivity, the decision making, everything you're saying, that all tracks. I love that. This has been great. Super interesting conversation. I love just how, you're a man of many interests, like we were saying, and I love that you were able to chase that down and have the energy to go ahead and work on STRATOS and things that you're passionate about. And there's people out there, like we were just talking about, right? Everyone's got a passion of some kind. Do you have any advice for the people that are out there who think, well, maybe this is a bit out of reach? Like, you're a prime example of someone who's got your own business. You had a newborn and you pursued it anyways, right? You've had a lot of excuses to, I'm going to shelve this and I'm just going to be that boy watching the thunderstorm out the window still, but you didn't, you chased it. What advice do you have for people who want to get started?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do is start even before you feel completely qualified to do it. The tools that we have available now, they can help you close the gap that used to stop people before they started. the technical knowledge, design, research, strategy, writing, prototyping, these are the things that AI can help you get further along on to help validate the thinking and really help you decide, hey, does this have traction, or do we need to pivot, or maybe I just need to do something else entirely. But that's the point. Like if you wait until you feel like you belong and you deserve to do this, you're going to miss the opportunity. So, use it judiciously, but if you're passionate and you're excited, yeah, go for it. The tools are only going to matter if you bring the obsession, right? Like, AI can help you move faster, but it can't make you be ready and excited to do it. You got to bring that conviction. So, don't wait to have the team. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Build the smallest credible version of the thing, and then let reality start giving you the feedback. One of the things I heard this the other day, and it stuck with me, and it feels particularly relevant here. Nobody really remembers the day Google or Amazon launched. Like, do you remember, a big monumentous occasion like Google is now live and now suddenly our lives were changing? No, like nobody remembers when that started. It was built over time. It became the thing that everybody knew it to be today, but they didn't wait for today to push it out. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. So the question is really no longer, can I do this? Can I even begin? I think for a lot of people, the better question needs to be, what am I willing to take seriously now that these tools exist and I have the opportunity to really explore?
Yeah, well said. And bring your own drive. That's definitely something that AI cannot help you with. You have to be the one to be motivated, to be driven, to go ahead and do it. Because you're right, the tools are there. Start at the start. Doesn't matter what the start looks like. Right? I loved that analogy. So that's awesome.
Right. Get it out there, see what it is, get some feedback, and build. And AI can help us do it a lot faster now than we used to be able to do it, but you still have to be obsessed with what you're doing.
Yeah, well said. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time, Ian. Where can anyone find your work? Where are you on socials? Where can people keep track of what you're working on?
Yeah, no, and thank you, Brandon. This has been great to chat with you here today. You can find me at justcause.agency, which is the brand studio, and then stratos.now. That's STRATOS. .now to learn more about Stratos and what we're bringing to market. And then LinkedIn is probably the best social to follow me and see where both organizations are headed.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Ian.
Cheers.